Hello, and make sure that you have your activity sheet and your 26-line essay separated so that you can go through this line by line. You're going to be pausing throughout this to work on your essay and then returning back to this video. So let's go ahead and look at activity 1. This is where they're discussing your thesis. So they should have highlighted the thesis on your 26-line paper, and then they described what your position is. You are going to read their position and decide if it actually reflects what your position is, because they were basically summarizing. If it doesn't reflect what your position is, you have to determine, does it not reflect my position because I didn't accurately write my thesis, or does it not reflect my position because they misread my thesis? So go ahead, take a minute, look at what they wrote, and determine if it reflects your thesis, and if it doesn't reflect your thesis, what do you need to do to change that, if anything? So go ahead, read that, and then take a minute to change your thesis on your 26-line essay. All right, so now that you're back, look at the next portion, number 3. And they had to decide if you took a clear stance on the prompt or if you ride the fence. If you rode the fence, if that's what they circled, then you need to go back to your thesis and potentially your entire essay and make sure that you are clear on a position. So if they have circled rides the fence, then you need to go back to your essay and decide how much of it you need to rewrite. Go ahead and pause if it's ride the fence. Take care of that. Otherwise, let's move on to activity 2. Okay, so for activity 2, this is where they're analyzing your reasons and support. And remember, with STAR essay, the support is going to be an example. So number 4, they needed to find the reason that supports the thesis, and then they had to describe it. And then they had to explain if that reason logically supported your thesis. If they were not able to explain your reason, or they said no, then you need to pause the video now and go back and rewrite your reason so that it's more clear, or so that it is a logical reason to support your thesis. You could also look at that why or why not to determine and kind of help you to guide your rewriting. So if you have a no circled, you need to go ahead, pause the video, take care of that reason, and then come back here. Otherwise, we are going to move on to the example. So remember, the example is something, your own personal example that supports your reason. So they should have rewritten the example, and then they were asked if the example logically supported your reason and then supported your thesis. And then they had to explain why or why not. If they circle no here, then you'll need to pause the video. You'll need to go back or rewrite your logical or your example so that it is logical, so that it does actually support the reason. When you're done rewriting, you're going to come on back here. All right, so now let's look at the example as far as if it's specific or unspecific. So hopefully they circled that it was a specific example and not just a generalized example. If your example is generalized, they circled yes, then you do need to go back and make sure that it's more specific. It might have supported the thesis, but if it's not a specific example from something, your own life, what you've read, then it needs to be more specific. So you might have to, at this time, if it's not specific, you might have to actually change your entire example here. So if they circle no, please go ahead, pause the video, work on your example to make it more specific. Otherwise, let's continue on. All right, activity 3 is the counter argument. Remember, they should have put a box around the counter argument so you can look at that in your essay. And then they were asked if you picked a specific opposition's reason. If they circle no here, you need to go and make sure that you add this into your paper. So if they circle no, please pause this, go back and add it to your writing. All right, so then the second thing for number 15 they were asked to do with your counter argument is they were asked to determine if your counter argument paragraph actually refuted the opposition's reason. And then they were asked if it was effective. So you might have, attempted to refute it, but you weren't effective at it. And so go ahead and look at 15, 16, and 17. And hopefully you don't have any changes. But if they said, no, it's not effective, and then they explain why, then you need to go back into your counter argument and you need to take care of that. You need to make sure that you have an effective opposition, or that you have an effective counter to the opposition. Number 18, we're going to ignore. I forgot to remove that in copying and pasting. Moving on to activity 4. If you need to work on your counter argument, pause the video and then come back when you're finished revising and editing. Activity 4 had to deal specifically with editing. And so one of our big focuses this year has been compound sentences. And you, by this point, should not have any errors in a compound sentence. When you recognize you have two independent clauses, you should be using the correct formula. So they went through and they put a dot in the margin of the line if there was an error with a compound sentence. Look through your essay. Do you see any dots in the margin? If so, pause the video, rewrite that sentence or adjust the sentence so that it fits one of the compound sentence formulas. If you don't see any dots, then let's keep moving. All right, so they were asked to circle basically any errors. This included misspelling. This included capitalization errors or errors with punctuation. So if you see anything circled in your essay, look and see what it is, specifically with misspelling, capitalization, and punctuation. There's also a list of things that they were looking for, so that can help you to identify what the area is the error is that they're circling. Go ahead and take a minute to review your essay, make any editing that you need to, pause the video, and then come back. All right, so let's go ahead and look at activity 5. These are just very specific star things. Did you write in small handwriting? Now, there's kind of a sweet spot where you're writing small, but not so small that someone wouldn't be able to read it. So if you're writing big, you're wasting space, you're wasting lines. So if you did not write small, then for your final draft, you will need to write smaller. Is the handwriting legible? If it's not legible, the STAR people don't try to decipher it. They just don't grade it. So if your handwriting is illegible, meaning they can't read it, then you've essentially wasted your time and guaranteed yourself a failing score. 25, does the student write outside of the box? If you're outside of that big black thick line, that will not be graded. So any words, a letter, a period, that does not count if it's outside of that big black box. Number 26, do they start each line of text almost touching the left side of the box? Now, if you scooch over a little bit after every single line and you're not almost touching that left side of the box, then you've basically wasted a line or 2 lines of text. So make sure it shouldn't be touching where you can't read it, but it shouldn't be this, this huge space between the left side of the box and where your writing starts. The only time you have a space there is when you're indenting for paragraphs. Also on a note for indenting for paragraphs. Paragraph indents should not be half the page. An indent for a paragraph is about 1 inch. So if you take your thumb and you push it on the paper, the width of your thumb is about 1 inch. Okay, so that's what it should be. Now, 27, they were asked to analyze if you wasted any lines. You put a title. You don't need titles. If you skipped lines instead of indenting for a paragraph. If you started on the 2nd or 3rd line. So they were asked to analyze your use of the space. Remember, you're given exactly 26 lines of text. And so if you wasted on these things, you could essentially run out of room. All right, so now what you're going to do, if they circled yes, does the student write in small handwriting? That should be yes. Is the handwriting legible? Yes is good. Does the student write outside of the box? The correct answer, what we're looking for, is no. Do they start each line of text almost touching the left side of the box? The answer we're looking for is yes. And then 27, we don't want you wasting lines, so hopefully they circle no there. Now what you're going to do is you're going to work on rewriting your final essay. Now this is kind of a luxury that you get here in class for this practice that you might not necessarily get on the STAR. It depends on how much time you have. So your revising and editing would be done after all of the multiple choice is finished. So please go ahead and take that final draft sheet, and you are going to rewrite your essay so that it's a nice clean copy onto that final draft sheet, and that is going to be due at the end of class today. If for some reason you finish early, you need to go onto Quizlet and work on the vocabulary there. Another option would be to hop on over to No Red Ink, and you can do some extra practices that are not assigned or any that you have missed